Welcome back on the main stage once again, and I have to say thank you so much for being with us right now. And there are actually a group of people that now. Here's the thing: I don't expect everybody to be with us every single session, throughout the day, every single day, because naturally you're working, you've got things to do, you're busy people, and you have other things on your mind, and that's fine. So popping in and out, looking at your calendar, really choosing the right things that are right for you, that's what we're encouraging. But the thing is, there are a group of people that have been with me every single session. I think they're loyal, they never go away, they're here for every single word, and that's right, these people right in front here on the in this hall. I think they sleep here because they're still wearing the same clothes every single day. Our kind of virtual audience who never seem to move. Well, they do. They kind of shuffle and wiggle, which is great. And I just have to say thank you. Thank you so much for being with me every single session. You don't say much, you don't engage much, but you're there, and that's important. Thank you so much. Right. Let's move on to our next session. This is all about people analytics, a debate on really how and where to start. So those two questions, we're going to get closer. We may not answer exactly those questions, but we'll certainly get closer towards where we want to be and give you some food for thought on what you can do in your organization. So let me welcome to our virtual playground right now the Customer Success Director of Orgnostic, which is actually one of our global partners, so of HR Week 2021. Delighted to have her with us, Amina Hodzic. Amina, are you there?
Yeah, hi Peter.
Hello Amina, how are you?
Great. As your audience that's following you.
Yeah,
I hope I'll be more active though.
It's full. They say nothing. They just kind of wiggle and shuffle, and notice they're wearing the same clothes, which is good, which is fine. But yeah, they're loyal.
They're loyal. They don't move.
They're loyal. They don't. That's right. And they don't say anything either. I mean, that's good. No feedback sometimes is good feedback. Right, Amina, I'm going to leave it up to you now to take charge of this healthy debate. And towards the end, I'll come back in and ask questions from viewers that are listening and watching. Okay.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Peter. So hello, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join our panel today. My name is Amina, as Peter said, and I'll be moderating our debate. So I'll start by briefly introducing myself and the panelists today. My career has been so far in HR, and I have years of experience working in scaling organizations and partnering with business to support organizational growth. I've had the opportunity to lead HR teams ranging from Latin America to Middle East. And today I am working in a position as a customer success director in Orgnostic. Orgnostic is a people analytics platform which is designed for fast-growing companies with an aim to help set up people analytics in an easier and less costly manner. So this is exactly what our topic is going to be about today. And that is how and where do we even start establishing people analytics. So I'm honored to introduce my panelists, and I'll go ahead and start with Lital. Lital has been an applied researcher for 20 years now. She helps organizations improve business performance by making informed decisions about people. She does that through providing executives with guidance in the journey towards a data-driven workforce while conducting people analytics projects. Also, Lital writes and lectures on the topics related to people, data, ethics, and she's leading learning programs and mentoring programs for various industries. Welcome, Lital, to the panel.
Thank you, Amina. Happy to be here.
Great, thanks. Our next panelist is Mladen Radovic, who, as he says, is an engineer who wandered into the HR space and he liked it. Mladen joined Infobip 5 years ago, which is a first creation unicorn, where he found an ideal role for him that is best described as people operations engineer. Working in this position meant for Mladen being able to work in the field of HR, but also connected with engineering, which knowledge kind of gathered in people analytics and tools. After Infobip, Mladen joined Get Your Guide, and he spent 2 years in Berlin working in the people analytics function. And recently he moved to Bitpanda, which is also a fintech unicorn, on an exciting journey to basically build people analytics function from scratch. Nice to have you with us today, Mladen.
Hey, nice to be here. Thanks.
Great. We also have Mirta Stantic joining the panel. Mirta is currently a doctoral student in experimental psychology at the University of Oxford, and she's studying individual differences in face perception. She serves at the advisory board in Orgnostic, and previously she worked as a data analyst supporting business recruiting functions at Facebook San Francisco, where she was tasked with workforce planning, attrition, transfers, and growth modeling, and designing different dashboard solutions to improve recruiting productivity and accelerate hiring capacity. Thank you for your time, Mirta, and joining the panel.
Thanks for having me.
Great. Last but not least, we have Alisa Evsina joining us from NIS, where she started in 2014 with a goal to modernize compensation and benefits area and policies. Today, she is an HR director at NIS and focuses on developing various areas of HR to strengthen NIS's employer brand and generally improve the corporate culture. Alisa has over 20 years of experience in managing HR to facilitate strategic growth, and she also has 2 master degrees in HR, and she's CIP certified. Welcome, Alisa.
Thank you. Hello, everybody.
Great. So as you can see, I have a really awesome group today. So I'm gonna switch to our panel discussion, and we can immediately dig into our topic today. And I think that we should start by first kind of explaining what is actually people analytics, because we do have different, let's say, perceptions and understanding of the topic. So maybe Lital, you can define for us what people analytics actually is, and when would you recommend organizations to start with people analytics?
Yes, sure. So people analytics is all about exploring, inferring, and communicating significant data patterns to initiate and to support business decisions related to people in the organization. And every organization in any size and industry, leaders should consider starting leveraging workforce data for insights that enable to determine what people needed to support the business strategy and account for costs and benefits of talent and maximize the return on investment on the workforce. So some motivational example may be where top employees come from, how to find more, how our top talents are engaged, why people leave the company or stay, and what return on investment we gain in training, and what most successful leaders in the organization do, and so forth. And as you can figure out, these kind of questions actually cover the whole employee life cycle. And in a sense, people analytics refer to exploring characteristics and behaviors and integrating them together to improve business performance. It's not about measuring the HR team's productivity or holding HR accountable. And it is not about dashboard also. Dashboards are important, but they are not aimed to improve the business performance directly, but rather to serve as a descriptive tool. This is a kind of myth or misunderstanding that we hear a lot. So dashboards enable us to present KPIs, key performance indicators, and answer questions such as, did we reach our goals? How far are we from reaching the goals? And by using dashboard, we can't answer the important question, why? So for that purpose, we need people analytics, which enables us to understand the factors that drive those exact KPIs that we see on our dashboards.
Great. Thanks, Lital, for that view. Maybe, Mirta, you can comment from your experience. How was people analytics perceived and defined?
Yeah, I think maybe I can also give sort of a more detailed answer on the second part of that question, because I feel very strongly about sort of a good time to start with people analytics, because I think Lital's done an excellent job defining what it is and is not. But I find that companies should always sort of start a people analytics theme sooner than they think they should. I find that many companies will be very quick to hire their first HR generalist and sort of head of HR, and then relatively slow to expand the organization appropriately. What I mean by that is that they will, in my experience, hire a number of HR specialists before adding an analyst to the team, and these specialists will often serve sort of in deeply embedded roles with their business functions, but not be able to realize inefficiencies in the business processes that could be addressed by partnering with an analyst. So I think a good time to think about hiring a people analytics person or a team is when you hear your HR specialists say things like, well, if only we had the data, I'd be able to help my business so much better. Because it is not a job of an HR specialist to have sort of the know-how for setting up data pipelines or even just mathematically being able to analyze data that exists. This is the point at which having an analyst, I think, is quite crucial. This can be both a person who sort of knows about what data is already available through various systems or surveys, and is also able to build visualizations, dashboards, look at various metrics that could help the HR specialists address inefficiencies in their business processes. So I think the when is just as important as understanding sort of what the people analytics function will and will not do for you.
Great, thank you. Now that we kind of defined the when and what, we move on to how. Yeah. So the question pops up: where do I start with people analytics? What are some of the prerequisites that I need to have to make sense out of the data that I have? And are there some limitations to that process? So Mladen, you had experience setting up people analytics teams and processes in different organizations. So maybe you can give your view on that.
Yeah, thanks. So I would say the first thing that it sounds obvious, but might not be in real life when you go and see how it's done, to define a goal, right? See what are you aiming for to get out of the people analytics project, or maybe an ongoing thing that you want to introduce, right? So it's either a problem that you want to solve, maybe analyze an efficiency of a certain process and see how you can optimize it and help out HR managers, for example, or maybe trying to test a hypothesis, right, to maybe get better candidates or to lower the attrition in the company, right? But in the beginning, you have to have a clear picture about it, right? Once you know what your goal is, then you can go in and map out the data, right? And when I say map out the data, I think I mean what you already have and what you might need but don't have yet, right? For example, you will see, okay, these are the key metrics that I would like to follow and check them out. And you will check either you have a certain HR system, maybe an HRIS or a recruitment software or anything, or you might use Excels, right? Google spreadsheets. Those are still collecting some data, and they can be used on a smaller scale. But you will see if you have the data there, or if you don't have it, but maybe you want to introduce something for gathering that kind of data, right? Maybe some new fields in an HR system, or maybe a new survey, so that can help you out gather some data, right? That's the second step, right, from my perspective. And it's always a good thing to understand that you don't need HR systems to start with any people analytics projects, right? You have data collected in different ways, so it's never too early, or let's say you're not too optimized to start with the people analytics, right? And I would say the last thing would be to understand the data that you're using. I've seen examples where we have data analysts who jump in and analyze the data they've been given, but they don't really understand how the data is gathered, what's the meaning behind the process, right? So how data reflects every interactions with employees or managers or anybody. So that's an important insight to have once you're doing the analysis, right? Because data analysts can come to some correlations or conclusions at the end that might not really bring any insights or value, because they don't have this background of how everything is set up, right? So yeah, I think that the last thing here with knowing the data is actually also see which countries you're in, right? Maybe you don't have an office only in Serbia or in Balkans, but you have in EU or maybe US or other markets, because you also have a lot of sensitive data which you are processing, right? So GDPR is big in Europe, but in US there are some other regulations, especially in the diversity and inclusion segment. So there are some data fields that you can track easily in US, but not in EU, right? So that's always important when you're starting off and checking the data. Can you actually collect that data and process it, right, where you're located at? Yeah, so I think that would be.
Great. What's your experience here, Mirta, given that you joined early stage to the people analytics team in Facebook?
Yeah, I did quite early, really. It is my sense that people sometimes don't perceive people analytics questions as people analytics questions. What I mean is that oftentimes when you sort of are building a people analytics, well, I can't tell. Oftentimes is maybe not right. In my experience, people will sometimes say, well, that's just a business question. And I think sometimes very early on have a difficult time delineating between people analytics questions or business questions related to people, which I think brings us back to Lital's previous point, which is that people analytics questions are just business questions that relate to people and people data. So I think sometimes when the function is non-existing, the first step sort of before even everything that Mladen's outlined from the very get-go is defining what a people analytics question is, as opposed to a business question that you would ask a business analyst to answer. But I think he's struck a really, really important point, which is that the interplay between the analyst and the business function that they serve, like I cannot overstate how crucial that is, right? The people who actually are generating your data, if you're working with recruiters, they're using a recruiting system, an ATS in a particular way, you have got to, as an analyst, understand the way in which they're using it, because that's generating the data that you're then using to gather insights. And if you sort of think that it's being used in a particular way and it isn't, then you're obviously going to make misleading assumptions off of that data. Similarly, if you're an engagement analyst and you're running a survey and you think that people are understanding your question in a particular way, but they're not, you then again run the risk of sort of misinterpreting the data that's coming out. So I would say half of the analyst's job is certainly understanding how the data was generated. And this is where I find that having an analyst as opposed to sort of just an HR specialist who is inclined to look at data can be quite helpful, because in my experience, analysts are more likely to question themselves what the data source is and how it was generated. Whereas, again, it has been my experience that recruiters, for instance, will just assume that everyone is using the system in the same way that they are. And as an analyst, you can sort of question that assumption, which is quite crucial. So if you have an analyst who's not questioning all of the assumptions of where the data is coming from, I think it is sound and wise to encourage them to do so.
Great. One of the things that you all agreed on so far is that people analytics starts with a business question, and the question of people analytics is not different to any business question. So now we come to the point, how do we embed HR function to business and establish this partnership with the key stakeholders that are going to be the sponsors throughout the organization? So let's say you have a lot of experience working very closely with the business. What is your point of view here?
I will start. I just got in my head to make the parallel. If we talk about HR, if we go like at my career beginning, that was HR administration. So, and we went through all this long way from HR administration to talent management. And now people analytics is also coming from simple reporting to people analytics and using this very fine data to predict some actions in the future. And business now is still, for me, especially my industry, for example, they're very direct. They need, and like I think it's a human being, we need to see immediately the direct impact. And when we talk about reporting or descriptive analytics, it's clear. You took data that is from your reporting, you do some conclusions, we understand. But if we talk about some future things that might be linked, so it's very hard to sell to business. And as the colleagues properly said, people need to know how to read, and this is also probably our responsibility and our strategic partnership to provide the proper analytics, to make to know how to read it, and to eager for that. So we need to create a space where our business will look for us and will ask for this data. But this data should be reliable. If we make mistakes and we talk too fluffy, so we won't create this trust relationship regarding the data. And I think that's...
Got it. Great. Thank you for sharing that point of view. Lital, you also work very closely with different executives. How is your experience here?
So I want to offer a different perspective about the impact. You know, HR professionals manage many processes in the organization. Workforce planning, recruitment, onboarding, learning and development, feedback and evaluation, recognition, promotion, you name it, many processes. So all these processes together create some kind of workforce capabilities, some kind of aggregated workforce capabilities. Like think about culture and engagement and efficiency and leadership, innovation, things like that. And these capabilities enable the organization to actually achieve its business goals, like quality of products and productivity and customer satisfaction. And this is how we actually create business outcomes like revenues and stakeholders' returns. So people analytics means that HR should focus on people data to impact the business. And our research approach in the last years moved from focusing on human resource processes, which we traditionally always measured and we know how to deal with them, to actually focus on business performance indicators and these indicators that we want to actually impact. And to make that impact, any people analytics initiatives should start with conversation with business leaders. Now, everybody said that HR, well, they may be fear of the analytics, they are not well trained regarding that, but I think that communication is one of the strengths of HR leaders, and this is where every initiative should start. And to do so, I suggest just ask about the most critical outcomes that a line of business has, and start from that, understand the, how the line of business is measured and how HR impact this exact measurement. And this is a good way to start the conversation.
Great. So brings us basically to the point where we start with the people analytics project, right? So Mirta, you can maybe share from your experience, how does one people analytics project look like, and what are some of the important points, and why do we even have it?
I do apologize. I'm going to answer that question. I apologize in advance if there's a ton of background noise. There's just some construction that started behind me. So I hope the noise cancellation works okay. So I think to answer that question, it might actually be useful to unpack what a business case would look like. I think that will make more sense to people than sort of talking abstractly. So imagine that you have a number of functions in your company which have set aggressive hiring goals for the year, and you have some functions that you know are lagging. And obviously in conversations with various business leaders who lead those functions, they're telling you why they think those things are lagging, but they've got sort of little data to back that up. They're mostly based on a gut feeling of what might be happening, which really means that, you know, if there is a recruiter or two who are louder in sharing their perspectives, that's what the business leaders are hearing. You're not really getting a comprehensive view of what the data is telling you is happening and why a function is lagging. So a people analytics team or an analyst would take this on as a project, and they would investigate and deep dive into sort of potential causes for this delay, and then also be the person who who you partner with to understand how to best address it. Likely, it's you would look at sort of a number of metrics at first. So you might start by understanding the intricacies of the business function that is lagging, reviewing their previous hiring timelines to understand if something has fundamentally shifted, and if so, what. So for instance, you could ask things like, has the time to hire gotten longer this year than it has been in the past? Is it taking longer to get candidates through the pipeline? If so, why? Are they stuck at stages that relate to us, the business, or are candidates stalling at various stages? Is it taking us more candidates to find the right person, right? Are we having sort of a harder time getting the right candidate through the pipeline? Are we having more declines of our offers than we have previously had? Can we look at the reasons that people are declining offers, or is it obvious that something is off with our efforts, or is it sort of unclear why people are declining offers? Each of these obviously suggests a different action for the business, so it's quite important that the data that you're making these decisions based off of are solid, which is again where the analyst comes in to make sure that the behavior that's generating the data, say in your ATS, is sort of an appropriate behavior. And of course, I've simplified here greatly. Most of the time, the reason for any sort of function lagging is going to be more complex than a simple explanation like candidates are declining because there is a single competitor who is offering them better terms, right? That's quite rare. But this is where an analyst will truly come in as your partner to the business to understand how to best address the challenge that was identified in sort of the course of the analysis. And I think it's key to understand that the People Analytics project will then always start with the business question and always go back to that question. So what is the issue that we're addressing it? The analyst then sort of goes in as a consultant almost and investigates a number of reasons that that could be causing an issue, and then comes back to that same question, right? How do we most efficiently address it based on the data that we've identified as being the problem? How do we most efficiently change our business process to address that? I hope that's helpful as an example, because I think it's sort of a well-contained project as opposed to a longer running People Analytics project, of which there are also a number in any given year.
Absolutely, and I think that many people in the audience can relate to that in a sense of specific part of managing talent acquisition. Mladen, do you want to share maybe your point of view or an example from your experience?
Yeah. So I think from the TA side project that Mirta explained, I totally agree there. Like it's a common like project example. Another I think common project for People Analytics would be around diversity and inclusion, especially in the past few years. One project that we did last year was diversity diagnostics, which was again a one-time off project where we sat down and in this case focused on, let's say, women as a group, and then to see if we discriminate in any of the parts of the processes in the company, right? From hiring to promotion cycles to compensation fairness in the salary increases that we give out, and then again in the churn part, right? Do we have more female who are leaving or etc., right? So that's also an example of a short-time project that we did in the span of 3 months. We gathered the data that we were allowed to, and then we wanted to analyze each of those components to actually see if we should maybe adapt processes or educate managers or any of those, right? Segments, right? Maybe if we're hiring, I don't know, more women on lower level positions, but more male on higher level positions, why is that happening, right? And then reinvestigate the hiring processes, the pool of candidates, right? And then just go into details and find that question that Mirta was talking about, right? What's the problem and how can we adjust the business process and then solve it, right? In this case, the goal would be to offer the same opportunities to each of the groups in the company, right? A female, a male is just like women or men are just an example. It can be ethnicity or it can be different sexual orientation. So really different things. But then here it kicks into the sensitive data part and what can you actually analyze, right? So some of those things in EU are quite classified, to say so. US is a bit more free, but yeah.
going back to GDPR regulations, right? Great. We are getting now to that point of being a little bit more mature in people analytics, and Alyssa mentioned something very important there. There we try to become predictive in those analysis. So Lital, maybe you can define for us what would predictive analytics actually be, and how predictive can they actually get?
Okay, so before we discuss predictive analytics, I just want to offer a point of view to make sense of it. So it's important to understand that in recent years there are two significant trends in using people data. First is that we indeed embracing a future perspective. We look beyond the current workforce data, and we include in our analysis data from any stage of the employment, potential candidates, current and even former employees. And this is a huge change comparing to last decade, let's say. So we try to create a lens into the future regarding likely outcomes in business questions. And secondly, we integrate data from various sources. So instead of the isolated reporting inside the HR department, we move on to integrating various types from all kind of data sources in the organization. It's inside HR and also in the outside of HR. Now, predictive analytics is actually advanced mathematics that we use to examine patterns in current and in past data to predict the future. There is a misconception. Sometimes it refers to machine learning. Machine learning is computerized to automate the predictive analytics by generating algorithms that look at pattern without actually telling upfront what to look for, and how actually predictive will be. So most activity in people analytics will not leverage machine learning, unfortunately, for predictions, because there's not enough data or not enough good data within organizations usually. But sometimes we do use those methods, and we create an explanatory value instead of the predictive value when we want to explain decisions, explain patterns, explain a phenomenon that we see in the organization.
Great. Mirta, how about your perception working in a company like Facebook that gathers so much data?
I think there probably, I'm not going to presume, but there might be people in the audience thinking like, oh, sure, Lital, but my company is large enough to have enough data to do true machine learning. And I am here to tell you that that is not true. Literally, until your company is 100 years old and has collected data for 100 years in the same consistent way, you're not old enough to be doing machine learning. I don't mean to be presumptuous, right? Facebook collected an incredible amount of HR data and was sort of had the ability, because we worked in the States, had the ability to collect a lot of data that GDPR would restrict us from having. And even so, we found ourselves absolutely unable to run any sort of machine learning, and also not really in need of doing that. But even what sort of Lital was saying, that you could, run predictive models to understand how previous behavior drives future behavior, you'd be surprised at how much data you need to be able to do that in a stable way as well. I think probably the most common example is companies will try to use previous attrition to monitor and sort of model future attrition. And while this works very well at the company level, right, like at a size of a company of 10,000 people, if you say my attrition is 5% or 10% or 14%, that is relatively likely to stay somewhat stable year over year and to be sort of a useful indicator of what's likely to happen next year. However, when you start to break these things down by business function, you will already start to sort of have quite dramatic variation year over year, even in functions that are very large, right? Something that was maybe a 4% attrition last year will, for reasons known or unknown, be 5.5%. And if the function is large enough, that 1.5 percentage point really makes a difference in your plans. So I caution people to sort of think very hard and critically if somebody is claiming that they can sell you any sort of solution that will very, very accurately predict future performance based on previous sort of behavior, because even at very, very large companies, that is unlikely to be entirely true. So I guess we've mostly answered the question of what predictive analytics is not and where you should be careful. But I'm thinking that for a lot of people, that will actually be quite useful as well.
Absolutely. And before we wrap up and move to any questions from the audience, there is one really important question to ask. And Alice, I would like to hear your thoughts on the subject. When we get into the analyzing a setup and we start asking some sensitive questions, that might result in uncovering some organizational inequities or some things that can have a negative impact on the employer brand or the business itself. So how do you manage those situations from an HR point of view and towards the business in general?
First, data is a very expensive resource. And HR is in the business, is hired by the business to help the business to get the value, to be productive. And this is our knowledge, our experience, how we transform the data we have into the money. And this is, as the colleagues also said, this is our knowledge and, let's say, experience, how we translate this data. I might give an example. You get engagement, you make survey, and you get a great estimation, great values. So you thought they will be very bad. And as Mladen said, there are sometimes cultural specificity of the country. And you need to know how to read this data. For example, then you read all the comments and you have to balance, okay, we have great results, but we have a lot of negative comments. So, and then to make the right conclusion. And as we say, data is everything. So we need to have the data to protect ourselves, not to get something unexpectedly. There's a joke, I don't know whether it exists in the other languages, at least in Russian, when you ask, how much will be 2 + 2? Do you need to give or to get back? So that's our knowledge, how to read analytics, how to sell it. But for us, HR, we have to see all the sides and make the right conclusion. When it will come to get to know to everybody, we will already make the next step to protect our company from some bad obstacles.
Got it. Any examples or use cases you would like to share with Tal here?
Well, just in general, we all must remember that in any people analytics project or solution that we implement, we must consider the entire stakeholders that we have. It's the management, the C-suite level, HR, the people, and team leaders. So I think that we are running out of time. I have many questions, many examples, but the important thing is that we should consider them all.
Amina, listen, sorry to jump in. That's right. Time is it's been such a productive session with so much being shared. Time naturally flies so quickly. I'm just going to jump in with one quick question. So this is really in terms of smaller companies. So with smaller companies, it's not easy to have a specific person or position just for analytics, right? So what do they do in that case? What would you say quickly, maybe from a couple of you? So companies with smaller companies who don't have one person for analytics, what should they be thinking about, or what should they do to kind of reach or hit their outcomes they're looking for?
So educate HR people to have smaller people analytics project. There's not a lot of data, and they can do it. They can actually do it.
Okay.
Or you can engage a company who will do it for you.
Right. So,
Yeah, you
so
can
France,
reach out to
engage a company,
Orgnostic.
right. Yeah, Agnostic,
I was
absolutely.
just about to say, is that inappropriate to plug Orgnostic as a potential solution of all of your problems? Disclaimer, I work on the advisory board for Orgnostic.
Okay, listen, we've come to the end now of the session together. All I'm going to say is thank you so much for all of you sharing your insights. So Mladen, Mirta, Elisa, naturally, Lital, and Amina for shaping this conversation in the right way. Again, listeners, you're curious, you'd like to know more about what our panelists are doing, the companies as well. All you have to do is reach out to them directly over LinkedIn, and I'm sure they'll connect with you and start that conversation with you as well. Thanks so much for your insights, and naturally, you're all very, very busy right now, so thank you for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
having
bye.
us. Bye.
Bye-bye.